This question is from Jacqueline Kirsch in Rockville, Maryland. What should a family or person do if there is continuous calamity and death in an immediate family in a short amount of time? Would checking mezuzot be appropriate if the family is spread apart across different states?
First, we wish that this doesn't take place, but if Chas Shalom it does, God forbid, there is such a situation, so of course, the very first practical thing to do is to check the mezuzot. The mezuzot possess a power to protect the inhabitants of the home. And it doesn't matter even if the family is dispersed around the world, so everyone in his place, in his home, should make sure that all of the mezuzot are kosher. We can't know the hidden secrets of God and His divine providence. As we said before, the question is related to what we said in the class, that the ultimate faith that divine providence is ultimately for the good, even if we do not see it. That's the soul root of Jacob. And for that reason, since it's so difficult to continue with faith after bad things happen, obviously the greatest example of this is the Holocaust. That many people lost faith, but to retain faith in every possible situation, that's exactly what we explained is the soul root of Jacob, which has to do with being compassionate to other souls. But it's the faith that kol ma da'avid rachmana l'tav, the faith as expressed by Rabbi Akiva, that whatever God does has to be for the good, even if I don't see it. So once more, if we have that strong faith, we're taught in Tanya that things will very soon unfold in such a way that we are able to envision from now on only good things.
The next question is from Abraham in Los Angeles, and he asks, I'm paraphrasing this, do Jews believe, or does the Torah teach a prophecy of an Armageddon, or a final cataclysmic war? If yes, where is the safest and best location to be during such an event? Very practical here.
Right, there is what's called the war of Gog and Magog, which comes either before the appearance of Mashiach or just after the appearance of Mashiach, according to the Rambam, to Maimonides. But many great sages, including the Lubavitcher Rebbe, say that we've already gone through, we've had this, maybe in the Holocaust itself that we just mentioned before. So now we believe very, very strongly, and the stronger that we believe in it, the surer it will be that Mashiach, that the Messiah will come and the world order will become good, all through chesed and rachamim, through kindness and through compassion. So meaning that you can be wherever you are, but if you really want to be in a really good place, not just a safe place, so you're invited to join us here in the Holy Land of Israel.
Okay, this is a question from Paula in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. How can the reincarnations of Yaakov and Esau be applied in our day?
Right, so this was the topic that we didn't have time to elaborate upon. But as we said before, the first very, very significant reincarnation of Jacob is Rabbi Akiva. And he also had an anti-soul, whose name was Turnusropos, which was the ruler of the land of Israel in the time of the Mered, the time of the rebellion of Bar Kokhba. And he was actually the one that ultimately put Rabbi Akiva to death. But a very amazing story that we would have to devote maybe a whole class to is that his wife converted. And not only did she convert, this wife of the Roman ruler of Israel, she converted, and not only that, she actually married Rabbi Akiva. So this is an amazing, amazing story that that happened in the time of the Tanaim, before the completion of the Mishnah. And it means that already Esau himself was not yet being corrected, but his wife is already converting. The next reincarnation, Esau himself converts. There are three stages. Stage number one is Jacob and his bad twin brother. That for one split moment when they met, after many years of being apart, something unnatural in Esau occurred, and he embraced his brother Jacob in love. It was something exceptional, not the rule, the exception to the rule. And it just lasted for 1 second. But the next reincarnation, once more, Jacob still fights, and actually in the end he even killed, Esau killed Jacob, which is Rabbi Akiva, at the very end. Their whole life they argued, they debated with one another over philosophical questions about the Bible. What happened? We'll just say it in short. That all the time that they debated, Rabbi Akiva won the debate. It's just like winning against the archangel of Esau. So time after time this happened, and that evil Turnusropos became so aggravated with Rabbi Akiva that one time when he went home, his wife saw that he was very sad, and she asked what was the reason. He said that this Rabbi Akiva, every time that we speak, he wins. And this particular time, it was also in the presence of the emperor. So she said, Eshet Turnusropos, the wife of Turnusropos, said that I know that the God of this people hates adultery. So she asked her husband if he gives her permission to seduce Rabbi Akiva. That if she'll be successful in seducing Rabbi Akiva, so obviously he will lose his connection with God, because God hates adultery. And then the tables were turned over. So this is just an example of a goyish kop, that he permitted his wife to seduce Rabbi Akiva. And when she went and she revealed part of her body, of her foot, her leg, to Rabbi Akiva, so he spit and he laughed and he cried. So she asked, what is that? So he said, I'll tell you two things, two of the three things, but not all three. The third you'll find out later. I said, I spit because you came from a tipa srucha, from a stinking drop of semen. And I cried because your beauty will be buried in the earth. But why I laughed, I'm not going to tell you right now. So when she heard that, it obviously it means that he saw her beginning, he saw her end. And that's why he spit and he cried. But what was in the middle that he laughed, he didn't tell her, and so she became aroused once more. This is Esau's wife. That she became aroused and she converted. And he married her, and that's what he was laughing at. What he saw in his holy, in his Ruach HaKodesh. In any event, that was one stage of rectification, even though at the end he himself was put to death by this Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus, one that plowed the Temple Mount. This was about 60 years after the destruction, the rebellion of Bar Kokhba. But then another 40 years afterwards, these souls returned as Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and Antoninus Caesar. This was already not just the ruler of Judah and of Israel, of Palestine, as the Romans called it, but it was the emperor himself. And he became so connected to Rabbeinu HaKadosh that Rabbeinu HaKadosh himself said that they were brothers. Because initially they were brothers. But now the brothers returned in love, and in secrecy he converted to Judaism. The historians have three possibilities, because all of the Caesars in this time period, historically, all of them were named Antinonus. So it's not clear. There's three different possibilities of who this really was amongst the emperors of the Roman emperors. But one of them, once born in secret, according to Talmud Yerushalmi, according to one opinion, actually converted. And Rabbeinu said, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said that you'll have a portion in the world to come, implying also that they will be together in the world to come. When he died physically, this emperor, still in the lifetime of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, so he also, in deepest sorrow, he said, Nitparda Chavila, that the pact, our pact has been split, meaning that they were very, very strongly connected to one another. That is what we have to try to reach now in our generation. As our generation, that's exactly what we spoke about in the beginning, that the non-Jewish were also delving into the inner, the Goy himself has a twin brother whose name is Jacob, and he is the inner soul of his own world. And it should only be that he finds him and he connects to him. That's just like Antinonus connecting to Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And that's one of the promises and the things that we should be praying for and working for.
Okay, we're going to take a few more questions from outside of Israel, and then for people here, we'll try to fit in a few questions before we finish. This one is from Leah. Doesn't say where. She asks, maybe this is a classic question, but if Yaakov's rectification is love, and in particular his love of Rachel, what about his other three wives, Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah? If his rectification is love, why is Leah, the soulmate of Yisrael, called the, quote, hated wife?
Okay, that's a good question. Now, there are actually 4 wives. All of them he married in this week's Torah portion. Of his 12 sons, he gave birth to 11 in this week's Torah portion. So actually, this week's Torah portion, Vayetze, which is the 7th portion of the Torah, 7 is the most endeared number, has Jacob and 4 wives and 11 of the 12 children, together with his daughter, Dinah, all in this one portion. And then the continuation of what unfolds in his lifetime takes place in the weeks to come of this month of Kislev. In any event, the 4 wives are actually 2, because there are 2 primary sisters, Leah and Rachel, and each one has a maidservant. And according to Kabbalah, and even the simple pshat, the maidservant is a corollary, we'll call it, a part of the Gvira, of her mistress, we'll call her. So there are 2 primary wives, 2 wives of Jacob, Leah and Rachel, the higher and the lower. The Arizal explains 2 simple reasons why he fell in love with Rachel and not with Leah. Obviously, Leah was given to him also by Lavan. He was not aware. He did not desire to marry her, so that already makes it understandable why the relationship was not so warm as the relation with Rachel, who he fell in love with. One reason is that Leah is the higher soul, is above him. Again, this we can't explain too much, but Rachel is parallel to him, whereas Leah is above him. And so one reason is that he did not, to love is also to conceive. Just like together a married couple conceives birth in the act of procreation, there has to be some common denominator of conception, meaning to conceive one another, to understand one another. And Jacob was on the level of Rachel, so he conceived Rachel, but he did not, Leah was above him, he did not conceive her. That's one explanation. At a later point in his life, he did conceive her. Very interesting, it says that it doesn't say in the Torah that Leah died. Everyone dies except for Leah. So just like it says about Jacob, it says that he died, but the Chazal interpreted that he didn't really die. But of Leah, it doesn't say it mentioned at all that she died. So there's something very eternal about Leah, even more about Rachel. That's one reason. The next reason is that Rachel is the actual persona that corresponds to Mלכות, to kingdom. As we said before, the reason that he's called Yaakov is because he was holding on to the heel of Esau, which represents kingdom, that he wanted kingdom. And he wanted to realize Jewish kingdom, Jewish monarchy, and royalty as soon as possible. He knew that Esau has to come first, and that he's second in regard to kingdom, but he was holding on strongly to the heel to make it happen as soon as possible. And that's also something very important that we have to learn from. Now, the essence of kingdom is the soul root of Rachel. So that's the reason that he loved Rachel, and she is a total persona in Kabbalah. It's called a parzuf. Whereas Leah is not a total persona. She's just an illumination that comes from the mother figure in Kabbalah. She's not the total mother figure. She's just an illumination, a shining, a reflection of the Mלכות of the mother principle. So she's not a total persona as is Rachel. And that's the reason for the difference in the relationship. Now, once more, so the question is, what about Leah in our generation? A very important question. In Kabbalah, we're taught that in every prayer that we pray 3 times a day, every prayer is a unification between Jacob and one of his wives. So there are some prayers that the whole intention that we have is to unify Jacob and Rachel. And there are other prayers that the whole intention that we have is to unify Jacob and Leah. But each one is something very, very special, important in itself. As we know, most of the tribes, 6 of the 12 tribes, and the one daughter are all the children of Leah. And Mashiach comes from Leah, and Moshe Rabbeinu comes from Leah. So what does that mean? In the whole story that we told just before about Thomas Rupas and his wife, that she converted and married Rabbi Akiva, that was a second wife for Rabbi Akiva. Because Rabbi Akiva's first wife, what was her name? Her name was Rachel, Rachel. That's one of the reasons that Rabbi Akiva is clearly a return of Yaakov, that he fell in love with Rachel, Rachel fell in love with him. So who is then this Eshet Tunis Rufus, this wife of Tunis Rufus, they converted him? So we're taught that she is a rectification of Leah. And that's why he had to marry. It's also a question of Rabbi Akiva. Why did he marry two women? Since Rabbi Akiva is Jacob, he had to marry his beloved wife is Rachel. But now Leah also returns as the most beautiful non-Jewish woman in the world. And that she tries to seduce him. It says in the sages teach us that Leah was intended to marry Esau. Because she was the older daughter and Esau was the older brother. So in that lifetime she cried so much that through crying, not to fall into the destiny, the goral of Esau, she actually blemished a little bit her natural beauty. But returning as the wife of Tunis Rufus, Rabbi Akiva cried that your beauty is going to be buried in the earth. But she didn't cry. She was the most beautiful, but she did marry Esau until she converted. Again, these are also very, very deep themes and secrets in the writings of the Arizal to explain all of this. But Rabbi Akiva already marries and relates, has great love for this Eshet Tunis Rufus. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, we're starting to run out of time, so hopefully the Rav will give short answers to short questions. So we have a short question from Mercedes Perez, who asks, why were the blessings of Yaakov and Esau so similar that they both included the fatness of the land and the dew of heaven?
But Yitzchak thought that he was blessing Esau. And Esau has to do with this world. Already in the womb, Esau was given this world, and Jacob was given the world to come. So what's common to both of them is blessings of just like the fatness of the land of this world. And that's exactly the innovation that Jacob really wants, because he has his spiritual reality to himself. And what he wants to imbue the physical reality with his spirituality, with his divinity. And that was the meaning of the blessing. That's why those blessings that Jacob was given by Yitzchak, thinking that he is Esau, are the highest blessings of the whole Torah. It's the spiritual world permeating physical reality, which is the purpose of creation.
Okay, now we're going to take some questions here, and I'm going to take the prerogative to ask the Rav a question that popped in my mind at the beginning of the shiur. If Yaakov is the epitome of everything that God does is for the good, so why is it when he comes to Paro and Paro asks him, how old are you? He answers, my days have been few, and he even says, and not so good, and bad.
Few and bad.
How do we understand that?
That's a good question. And that was part of what we thought of it, talking about this evening. Of all of the fathers in their lifetime rectified elements of the primordial sin, as we said before. But the one who is closest to Adam and rectified the essential state of Adam is Jacob. Adam sinned for 130 years after the primordial sin by being separate from his wife. he was afraid to have children. After he sinned, after one of his sons murdered the other son. And that itself was a sin. During those 130 years, he blemished his covenant, that's the expression. He created demons and evil spirits. All evil spirits that exist in reality were created by Adam in those 130 years. The first 130 years of Jacob, he had to rectify that. He had to turn all of that into good, because again, he is the faith that all is for the good. But nonetheless, in working to rectify those 130 years of Adam, his first 130 years were few and bad. That's what he says to Pharaoh. And then he lived another 17 years. What does 17 equal? Good. So after he was finished, that goodness, when Adam was 130 years old, then he gave birth to Seth, who was the foundation of the rectified world, which is the world of Jacob. And that's why his last 17 years were good years.
I have to say, my question has bothered me for years, and you just answered it. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Okay, questions from here? Yes?
My question is that you said that Yaakov was the choicest of the patriarchs.
Right.
Yet we have this teaching that in the time to come we will call Isaac our father, not Abraham and not Jacob. So how do we reconciliate that? What can you shed light on?
Okay, that's also a very good question. There are three temples that also correspond to the three fathers. The first temple is the temple of Abraham, it says. The second temple is the temple of Isaac. Both of those temples were destroyed. It means that they were not consummate, were not complete. But the third temple that we're waiting for to be built by the Mashiach, the temple is called the ultimate home, house of God. God created the world to be a dirah, a dwelling place for himself. And that home is the third temple. The first two temples were not homes 100% for God. In that home, which is Jacob, the experience of godliness has to do with his father, the figure of his father. So just before we're talking about the union of fear and awesomeness, of subjective experience and objective reality. The objective presence of awesomeness of God in reality and the way I feel it. So the future is that I, feeling and calling Isaac my father, that I is Jacob. That's obvious, because if I call God, or if I call the father, the ultimate father, Isaac, so I am Jacob. The vessel, which is the vessel or the home, the abode, is the state or the consciousness of Jacob. And in that consciousness, he calls upon his father. That's exactly the secret that we mentioned before, that he dwells in the land of his father, in the experience of his father. But he dwells, he makes it a dwelling place.
Okay, more questions? Yes. And because I'm not sure that people outside of this room can hear it, so I'm going to repeat the question.
3 meals in Shabbat, and Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. How come we have the Erev Shabbat with Yitzhak? First meal with Yitzhak.
Okay, the question is, all evening we've been learning about the three patriarchs, and they correspond to the 3 meals of Shabbat. So the question is, we might think that the first meal of Shabbat is Avram, the second one is Yitzhak, and the third is Yaakov. Yet we learn that the first meal is Yitzchak. And the question is, why is that?
Okay, so that's also a very, very good question. The first meal is called the meal of the Chakal Tapuchim Kadishin, the orchard of the holy apples, that's the idiom. And it corresponds to the level of Malchut. We begin with Malchut because all the weekdays we worked hard and we elevated sparks of holiness to the lowest of the Sfirot of the world of Atzilut, the world of divine consciousness, Malchut. That's why the beginning of Shabbat is Malchut. The first meal is the meal of Malchut. We said before that Malchut is constructed from Gvura, from Yitzchak. So of the three patriarchs, even though he is Gvura, but he relates to Malchut. And since the beginning of Shabbat is Malchut, that's why the meal is the meal of Yitzchak. And then love is the day of Shabbat, that's Abraham, the second meal. And finally, the epitome of faith, of simple faith, and the ability to, through faith, to turn apparent evil into visible good, that's the third meal. That's Yaakov.
Okay. Any questions from the women's section? Yes. The question was, Rabbi Ginsburg was talking about the reincarnations of Yaakov, and one of them was Rabbeinu HaKadosh. So the question is, who was Rabbeinu HaKadosh?
Rabbeinu HaKadosh, his proper name is Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. It's called Rabbi Judah the Prince. The author or the compiler of the Mishnah, of the code of the oral Torah that we have. The principal figure that is present in this code is actually Rabbi Akiva. But the one who compiled it and wrote it and spread it throughout Israel is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He is the seventh generation from Hillel, son after son. He's the son of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. That's his father. The reason, one of the secret, deep reasons, is that he and Antigonus were so close, like brothers to one another. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and the Caesar, the emperor of Rome, is that when they were infants, this is a whole story that we'll not tell right now, but when they were infants, their mothers changed the mother of the emperor in order to save the life of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, took him and nursed him for a short period of time, and the mother, the wife of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the mother of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, took and nursed Antigonus. And the fact that he converted is because once he nursed the milk of we'll call her the princess of the Jewish people. And since the mothers interchanged for a short period of time, that's why they were so close to one another, these two souls.
A question from Danielle in Brooklyn. And knowing his name, you'll understand the question. Why does the book of Daniel appear in the writings and not in the prophets? Yet when people refer to the book of Daniel, they always refer to the prophet Daniel, implying that he was a prophet. So why is his book in the section of the writings, Ketuvim?
Okay, Daniel is not a prophet like the other prophets. Daniel has Ruach, the writings are called Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit. So even though we may speak of the prophecy of Daniel, but it's actually an expression of Ruach HaKodesh, of Holy Spirit. And in Kabbalah, it's taught that Daniel, his vision, all of his visions are in the world of Asiyah, which is the lower of the three lower worlds. The world of action, the bottom of the world of action. But he reaches up all the way to the crown of that world of action. Whereas all of the prophets or in higher worlds. The books of the prophets. That's why he is part of the writings, not part of the prophets.
Okay, we have time for just a few more questions, and we'll take them from here in Yerushalayim. Anyone else with a question? Yes. Okay, a very good question on actually last week's Parsha. How is it that Yaakov was able to buy the firstborn from Esau? What does it mean to buy the firstborn? Isn't it like a Kohen? You can't buy being a Kohen. So how can you buy being a firstborn?
Okay, there are a lot of Jewish jokes about purchasing to be a Kohen, but the truth is that you really can't purchase it. But here, as we said before, in truth, he was the firstborn, because he was the first drop, just that he came out second. So since in truth, deep down, he was the firstborn, that's why he had the ability to purchase the birthright. Also, it says that Esau despised his birthright, relinquished the birthright. Obviously, this is all before the giving of the Torah. Very likely after the Torah is given, even in such a situation, it would not be possible to purchase a birthright. But since this is before the giving of the Torah, in truth, he really was the first drop. So he was able to purchase the birthright.
Once again, I'm told that we're out of time, but I'm going to have holy chutzpah, and I'm going to ask one more question, because this Shabbos, around my Shabbat table, we discussed this for a long time. I have my own answer for it, but I really, really would like to hear the Rav's answer. And the question is, if Yaakov in truth was the firstborn, and if the characteristic that we associate with Yaakov all the time is emet, why does the pshat of the Torah, the simple understanding of the Torah, not the oral Torah, which tells us a very different story, but why does the Torah present Esau and Lavan as if they're okay? You don't see so much in the written Torah what we learn about them in the oral Torah. In other words, why is Yaakov continually put in the position of seeming like the bad guy who's stealing the bracha and taking the firstborn and taking Laban's sheep? Again, the oral Torah tells us very, very different. Nonetheless, the written Torah presents it, and when people read the Torah in English without any oral Torah, they come up with a completely different picture of what we accept. Why is that? Okay.
There's something about the written Torah that is called Mipi HaGvura. It was given from the mouth of Gvura. Gvura, as we explained this evening, is the soul root of Isaac, which is the concealment. We explained it as being the concealment of the Creator from creation. In relation to the written Torah, it's the concealment of the deep psychological motivations behind the deeds that are recorded in the Torah. In the Torah, deeds are recorded, things that happen. But the psychological motivation, justification, is not explained. That's what the oral Torah comes for. One of the secrets of the oral Torah is to reveal the inner or the deeper, the hidden dimension that just by telling the story face at the surface, on the surface conceals, because that's what Hashem wants. Why does He want to conceal? Because He wants to give you once more freedom of choice. It would be 100% clear, as we explained, what this whole root of Isaac is. Would it be 100% clear who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? So people would just obviously be drawn like a magnet to the good. As soon as it's not so clear, so say in this case that we're just reading the Torah at face level. So a little kid, Esau was a man of the fields. He was a hunter. He had a bow and an arrow. So maybe a little kid would more identify with Esau than with Yaakov. Is this guy, this boy that just sits in the room and just studies Torah. That doesn't sound so inspiring as Esau, who was a man of the field. Once more, what is it? Ultimately, it gives us, the written Torah gives us free choice. And that's because it comes, the written Torah comes from Isaac, from the Pia Gvura. And the oral Torah comes more from Jacob himself. The whole Torah has to do with Jacob, but once more, the written Torah is Pia Gvura. And about everything, the most important things in respect to this is what the sages teach us over and over again, that if you think that so-and-so is a tzaddik sinned, you're wrong. Like if you think that David sinned by reading the simple, literal reading of the Torah, you're making a mistake. And it says the same thing about many different great tzaddikim, that it appears that they sinned, and you have to have the sages to come and say that it's really not as it appears on face value. But the face value is very important. It's important to know that on face value it appears as though the tzaddik is maybe saying something. May I have one more?
Right, but Esau's head is buried in the Machpelah.
And you go there.
And Esau had, what did Esau bring out? Esau brought a minhag. What was the minhag? He was willing to sell everything for Chulim, Shabbos. And because of that, this minhag has come down to this day. And it's very...
Why didn't you bring L'chaim and show them?
Okay, that wasn't so much a question as an insight. Okay, we want to thank everyone. Of course, we want to thank Rav Ginsburg, everyone. And I'd like to end with a bracha that Rav Ginsburg gave over on Rosh Chodesh. On the pasuk, Ach tov v'chesed yirfuni kol yemei chayai, only goodness and loving kindness should chase after me all the days of my life. Rav Ginsburg revealed to us that the words Ach tov v'chesed, only goodness and loving kindness, in Gematria equals Kislev. So the bracha is that this whole month we should only experience goodness and loving kindness, like chasing after us.
Amen.